I'm a big fan of difficult games like Dark Souls, Cuphead, Fury, and many more. The bosses in these games are quite fantastic and very memorable. I've been on the edge of my seat as I retry again and again, eventually achieving the well-earned victory over the bosses that have stopped me many times before. So naturally, this $5 boss rush bullet hell will pull me in like a moth to the flame. So sit back and relax. My name is Noah, and it's time for a $5 review of Nowhere Patrol.
So, we've been talking about this series I've been doing people.
The game starts us off with an NES-style intro, showing the main characters that we can play as. Basically, these little guys take care of monsters and they call themselves the Nowhere Patrol. We have to fight through this mansion and get to the source and stop whatever is summoning these monsters. First off, I really like the character design, it reminds me of Cuphead. Both characters are distinctly different and feel like they have their own personality just from the character select screen. Wick is the brave, fearless leader, and Brisky is the cowardly sidekick. The character design sticks out as well, helping you keep track of where you are in these hectic bullet hell segments. I really like the look of the bosses. Each is unique and looks like a different object that resided in the mansion and is now possessed by an evil spirit. My favorites being the oven with its tall spider-like design, the bell with its dead-ass expression,
Tonight, you.
and the broken mirror that looks quite haunted and vengeful. A negative are the boss backdrops. Not much is going on, the color palette isn't great, so they can look quite bland. You can change the palette, but most aren't great, with some looking even worse, so I decided just to stick with the regular one. I think it's a nice feature, but I would have preferred one backdrop with more personality. Most of the time they just feel static since it's just walls, arches, and sometimes some red banners. I think adding some extra detail in the background would keep it interesting and bring out some well-needed color. An example would be to put some vines on these arches, a dark red banner with maybe some gold accents, and maybe some orange fires. Some of the later boss fights have more details, but still there isn't anything really special going on. It's kind of a waste since backdrops can add a lot to a boss fight. The early Mega Man games are a great example of making a boss arena look interesting with very little detail. Heatman's arena had a lava river running underneath of it, and Pharaoh Man has these markings on the stone backdrop along with these blue flames. They're small touches, but they make the boss arenas have some character.
Now I've got your...
Along with the boring backdrops, the music isn't that great either. The music for the last few fights isn't too bad, but it can get old real quickly, especially if you're going to be dying over and over again. All the tracks are just kind of repetitive and don't really have a whole lot going on music-wise. Good boss music helps motivate the player and can add a certain emotion to the fight. The game's music doesn't really do that, it's just kind of there for the sake of being there. This game doesn't have to have a robust soundtrack, but a good boss theme is crucial, especially for a game where all you do is fight bosses. The game doesn't have to have the most gorgeous backdrops and jaw-dropping music, but I would like the game to have some personality that fits the style of the game. The game can be colorful and still keep a creepy mansion vibe. I mean, look at Castlevania 1. The halls of the mansion are colorful, but still have this very distinct horror vibe that makes you feel unsettling, even if they are bright orange and green. There's some things I really did enjoy, and the game definitely has its own unique style. I just wish more could have been done with the music and the environment.
Many people thought they had.
The gameplay is the main attraction here. The controls are simple enough. You can jump, shoot, dash, and do special attacks. You also have different types of shots that have different ranges and damage. Each has their own strengths and weaknesses and feel different enough to make them feel unique. Some are strong against certain bosses and some are weak against others, so choosing is an important decision, especially since you'll be stuck with it for the entire run. We have 2 characters at the start, eventually becoming 3 once we beat the game. Each of them have their own unique abilities. The abilities are activated by getting these blue stars, and if we have 3, our abilities become even stronger. Wick has a pillar that blocks shots and an offensive blast that does more damage the more stars you have. Brisky can turn shots into health and also stop time, allowing us to reposition and get some free shots in. Murky is the hard mode character since he can only take 1 hit, but he can summon a shield and use an incredibly powerful beam. I always enjoy a hard mode character in games, especially when they have a powerful risk-reward playstyle. Each of the characters are interesting and unique, but Brisky is easily the best character and turns the game into a cakewalk. Wick and Murky's powers aren't bad, but they're garbage compared to Brisky's, since he can basically get a full heal and also negate a boss attack if timed correctly. Plus he can do that 3 times in a row if he has all 3 stars. The other 2 characters may have their own offensive ability that can speed up the fight, but why do that when the boss's attack can heal you for free? Moving on to the bosses, I think each boss is unique and every fight will test you in a different way, which keeps the game fresh. In terms of difficulty, the game scales pretty well with the bosses, with the exception of 2 that I felt like were a little too easy. The game also does a gameplay change up toward the end of the game that is reminiscent of Kirby's final bosses. I thought it was really cool, and you can definitely see where some of the game's inspiration comes from. Most of the bosses are great in their own right, which is definitely essential. You can't have a boss rush without fun bosses. For the most part, the gameplay is pretty fun. The downside is at times I feel like the worst enemy isn't the baddie in front of you, it's the controls and the mechanics. The invincibility period after being hit isn't long enough and can sometimes lead to extra unavoidable damage, a hard to manage jump that falls a little too quickly, and some funky hitboxes definitely hurts the game in the long run. Another issue is you can't shoot directly up or down, and this can lead to accidentally pushing the stick and walking to the left or right. There is a type of shot that does let you shoot up, but its damage isn't great, and I wouldn't recommend using it. This isn't a big issue until later on, when certain boss fights require you to stand still or use very slight movements. You'll accidentally walk into a death beam or maybe some spikes and then get yourself killed. The last thing I'll mention is there's one weird mechanic where you have to stop shooting to turn around. It takes a minute to get used to, but this can lead to a lot of missed damage, and sometimes you can take some damage if you aren't too careful. The game is fun and combat is difficult, but I wish the controls had a little bit more polish.
consciousness that there was a major problem.
To be honest, I have mixed feelings on pretty much everything. I love the character and boss design, but the gray, muddy aesthetic and repetitive music isn't great. Gameplay is fun, fair, and difficult, and there's definitely some unique boss fights. The downside is the controls just aren't super polished, so it's hard to enjoy the gameplay sometimes. I do think there is a good game here, and out of all the games that I normally see whenever I browse the $5 section, this one at least stuck out. And for $5, you are actually getting a lot of content out of this. Overall, I do think it's worth your time, so I am going to recommend this game if you can overlook some of its weird quirks. I would love to see a sequel that can improve on the game's controls and work on the game's art style to make the game pop and feel like its own. This game just needed a little bit more work and presentation along with the controls, but everything considered, it's a fun, fair, difficult bullet hell, and I had a decent time with it. Hey, thanks again for watching. If you want to help the channel, like, comment, and subscribe. It definitely helps a lot. I also have a Twitter you can follow in the description if you want to ask me to review a game or get updates for some of the content I'm working on. Anyway, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.